The recent flow of events had left quite a damper in the duo's mood despite the magpie's earlier pep talk, and it was showing. The two adventurers walked along the main path without a single word being spoken between the two of them. The awkward silence continued to build throughout their journey through the forest as both adventurers coped with the recent loss in their own way. Tanya withdrew a tome from her pack and began to review its contents to move her mind away from the sore reminder in her backside, while Risa devoted the rest of her walk fuming over what had just happened and taking mental notes to prevent such an event from happening again in the future. Tanya raised a brow as she paused her reading to look over at the ranger. The griffin was clenching her sword hilt tightly as she seemingly went over the events of the ambush in her head, even going so far as to grumble something incoherently every so often, as if talking to herself. Normally, whenever losing a fight in the past, Risa would have shaken off the loss, cracked a couple of jokes, and generally moved on with her life.
She'd never taken anything particularly seriously in her youth, unless it came to standing up for the Morgales family. Then again, they had all still been stupid teenagers, and the stakes had never been all that high, even when getting into street fights or the occasional duel.
Now, one wrong move could put them on death's door, and it was obvious by Risa's apparent rage that the griffin took that fact very seriously. Tanya quietly watched the ranger stewing in her own thoughts with growing concern. She was about to say something when quickly thinking better of it, choosing instead to remain silent and allow the ranger to work through her defeat in her own way. The pair of adventurers continued their track along the main path for about another hour before taking a side trail leading to the town of Kingsdale. Overall, the rest of the journey had been largely uneventful when compared to their encounter with the rat bandits. At one point, the duo came across a group of dire wolves, but the pack of feral canines were quickly dispatched without much effort by the two worn-down adventurers, who, now that they weren't being split up, had chosen to go with the old frozen fruit and slice and dice combo maneuver, freezing the paws of the wolves to the ground with Tanya's elemental magic, effectively pinning them in place so Risa could move in to put the crazed animals down for good. By the time Tanya and Risa had made it to the edge of the forest, they could see the sun cresting over the far-off horizon. The remaining light swept over the grasslands beyond the forest in an orange haze as it slowly began to give way to the growing shadow of night, giving the duo a decent look at the surrounding area. The landscape was molded into several large rolling hills, speckled with small hamlets and farms, segmented by knee-high stone fences. And not too far off in the distance they could see the town of Kingsdale, no more than a mile away. There wasn't much they could see of the town due to the large stone walls surrounding its perimeter, but if anything the defensive barrier just made the settlement an ideal safe haven. Especially for a pair of beaten and battered adventurers needing a safe space to rest to avoid any more unwanted encounters with the bandits and highwaymen. A strong breeze swept through the air, carrying with it the scent of lavender from the surrounding flora, filling Tanya and Risa with a new resolve as the two stared out at the winding road ahead of them. The duo shared a simultaneous sigh of relief before pausing to give the other a look, and then slowly breaking out into a fit of giggles, now that they were finally able to take a short breath of reprieve. The town was definitely a sight for sore eyes. And other sore things, of course, and it was exactly what they needed. But first they were going to need some new clothes, since their current state of apparel could get them locked up in the local jail for indecent exposure, or worse, land them a one-way trip into the stockades. Risa placed her hands on her hips as she stared out into the hilly grassland and considered their next plan of action.
Okay, so Kingsdale is just up ahead,
she said with a nod to the town as she turned to Tanya.
Okay. So, how do we get in without spending a night in jail? I'm pretty sure they're not just gonna let in a pair of streakers.
We're not streaking. We have shirts on. It doesn't count.
Well, yeah, for you maybe. Your tunic is so long that it's practically a dress. But look at mine.
Risa complained with a gesture to her own style of tunic, which barely extended down past the middle of her belly and leaving the rest of the griffin's body completely exposed,
save for the stretched-out undergarments clinging loosely around her hips.
Okay, yeah, fair point.
So, as I was saying, given our current state of dress, I recommend hitting up one of these settlements first to get some new clothes. You sneak in, nab us a pair of pants, and get out before anyone sees you. Then, all we have to do is walk up to the front gate, tell them we were robbed, and ask for entry. They let us in, and then it's straight to the end so we can both put this rotten day behind us.
Tanya furrowed her brow at Risa's plan.
Okay, now wait a minute. How come I'm the one doing all the sneaking around?
Risa frowned back at Tanya.
How come? Because you're not gonna be naked from the belly down with that long-ass tunic of yours. If someone catches you, they'll think you're a weirdo. But if someone catches me out there half-naked, you can bet I'll be spending the rest of the night with my furry ass in jail.
I want to see
Tanya nodded along the griffin's reasoning.
Okay, I suppose that's fair. Sorry. I guess I just don't know if I like the idea of stealing something that isn't mine. I could get caught and land in even more trouble. Are you sure you don't want to just head straight to the town guard and tell them what happened? I'm sure they let us in if we just explain what happened to us on the road.
If this was White Marsh, maybe, but this is Kingsdale. I've been here a few times while doing escort jobs on the road, and let me tell ya, the Kingsdale Guard are a bunch of jerks. Sure, they'd probably let us in, maybe even lend us some new clothes, but not until after they laugh their collective asses off at us. And after everything that's happened today, I'm not so sure how well I'd be able to handle another round of ridicule. I've just about reached the point where the next person who taunts me is getting thrown through the nearest window.
Tanya laughed nervously as the ranger punched her fist into an open palm.
Easy there, killer. We just got our butts handed to us not too long ago. I really don't need any more trouble today. Especially not with the town guards. Come on, Risa. I'm sure you've got a little restraint left in you.
Risa gave a complicit snort and nodded her head.
Fine. I'll play nice.
See, that wasn't so hard, was it?
Don't push it.
Right. Okay, so is there any other reason you don't want to talk to the town guards?
Risa stroked her chin for a moment.
They do tend to drink pretty heavily, if I remember correctly. And I'm not so sure I'm ready to risk potentially getting harassed by a bunch of guards during their late-night happy hour. I'm telling you, Tanya, it would be just so much easier to take the stealthy approach. Plus, we can always return everything after we visit the tailor tomorrow. What do you think of that?
Well, getting harassed by a bunch of drunks doesn't sound all that appealing. But stealing is still below us, Risa. You know we're better than that.
Ugh! Come on, Tanya. It's not even all that bad. Sure, fine. We're stealing from these guys. But when you stop to think about it, aren't we really...
Okay, let me think about that for a second. Yeah. But since you're making such a big fuss about it, I suppose I can use my magic to cloak my presence and get you some spare clothes. Just this once. We are giving them back as soon as we leave town. Promise?
Promise.
Nah. I want to see you pinky swear, Risa.
Risa shook her head with a roll of her eyes at Tanya's request, but did as the mage asked and hooked her pinky around the magpies before shaking in agreement.
I promise. I'm telling you, Tanya, it's the right move. Speaking with them is just asking for trouble. We go to them and they're bound to ask questions, and those harebrained mongrels are sure to tell the whole damn town about us by morning. Trust me, word moves fast in that town. No way in heck that I'm gonna let people know that a bunch of low-life ratlings got the best of me. I'd never be able to show my face in that town again.
So the truth finally comes out.
No it didn't.
So you'd rather go steal from some innocent farmer than take a blow to your reputation,
No. Okay, yes.
Ha! Knew it!
Risa slumped her shoulders in defeat.
Fine, whatever. I'm not gonna live this down for a while, am I?
Not for a while, no. If I'm going to go out of my way to do you a solid, you had better believe you're gonna be hearing about it for at least a few days.
Yeah, okay, that's fair, I guess. Thanks for the assist, Tanya. I owe you. Again.
You know I'm gonna hold you to that.
I know. Be safe out there.
I will. Don't worry, I won't be too long.
Tanya dismounted her roqua, coin pouch in hand, and began to set off, before turning back to Risa.
By the way, I hope you like what I pick out. Whether it's a warrior's tunic or a lady's dress, you're going to wear it, and you better like it too.
Wait, what? I never agreed to that.
Sorry, but you already owe me one. I'm catching it now. Okay, gotta go, bye!
Without answering back, Tanya cloaked herself within her magic, effectively removing her from sight beyond a faint band of light outlining her silhouette.
Aw, what? Lame! You know I hate dresses. Like, with a passion.
Yeah, I do. Sorry, Risa. That's what you get for trying to protect your ego.
Tanya quipped back before quickly turning away to hurry down the winding dirt path.
What? Who said anything about protecting my ego? My ego is perfectly fine.
With nothing else to do but wait, Risa figured she might as well set up a makeshift camp and keep watch for the mage. The ranger took Tanya's mount and led it back down the forest trail deeper into the woodline before taking it off the trail entirely. They moved about 30 or so meters from the dirt path to keep it just barely within eyesight among the heavily wooded trees. Risa tied the reins of the roqua around a nearby tree to keep it from wandering. She pet the large creature affectionately before withdrawing a sugar cube from one of the saddlebags and feeding it to the mount.
I bet you 2 bales of hay she ends up getting in trouble with someone within the hour. What do you think?
The massive beetle chittered some sort of insectoid response before proceeding to lay down.
Yeah, you're right. She'll probably be fine.
Risa conceded as she laid down next to a nearby tree and nestled herself into a comfortable resting position and angled herself towards the main road. It never hurt to be prepared. With the makeshift encampment established, there was nothing left to do but wait and watch until the magpie's return. Risa unsheathed her sword and laid it on her lap as she began her watch. Although it was true that the griffin had undergone a rather exhausting day, leaving the ranger both sore and fatigued, she willed herself to nevertheless remain a standard of high vigilance. No matter how tired, no matter how sore, no matter how exhausted she might be, Risa was going to keep watch until the magpie's return, and no amount of weariness was going to stop her. Risa suddenly woke up to the sound of Tanya's saddlebags being unbuckled. Thinking that the magpie had made it back to the camp already, Risa turned her head and was about to apologize for falling asleep, when her gaze was met with the image of a tall, dark-suited figure looting the mage's mount. Risa's eyes snapped open and she quickly clutched tightly at her sword hilt. The hooded figure had its back facing the ranger and didn't seem particularly worried about being quiet as it sifted through Tanya's collection of scrolls and books, every so often stopping to gloss over a few lines here and there before putting the items back. It appeared that either the cloaked figure hadn't noticed her just yet, or they were just extremely confident. Risa hoped it was the former. The thief may have caught her with her pants down for now, but Risa didn't intend to keep it that way for long. Risa's eyes darted around, checking for any other interlopers before finally settling back down on the thief looting the mage's pack. Judging from the lone Rokwa tied up to one of the trees, the thief had come alone. Risa kept still as she examined the trespasser. Whoever they were impressively tall. Judging by their height, she figured they had to be at least 7 feet tall, at minimum. On top of their size, they also sported a scaly, thick black tail that extended all the way down to the floor, and then some. The tail swayed back and forth along the ground, occasionally even flagging itself upwards from the ground up, only to fall back to the ground. Yep, they were definitely some sort of snakeling, although Risa couldn't tell what kind of variety. The figure also appeared to be wielding a blade with a slight curve to it over their back, hinting at some level of physical combat prowess. Risa's scowl slowly faded as a sudden thought crossed her mind. Redemption time. She made a mental note to later thank whatever higher power had just given her a second chance to prove herself, as she quietly drew herself to her feet with a sword in hand. As Risa stalked up to her prey, the cloaked figure withdrew a healing potion from the magpie's bag and swirled it around with one hand before pulling out a large tome with the other. The figure held the glass vial in the crook of her arm while flipping through several of the book's pages with apparent curiosity.
What you doing?
Grr!
The startled figure dropped the vial of red liquid, causing it to shatter on the floor as she fumbled with the book before spinning around to face the griffin. Risa felt her right eye twitch at the sound of the healing potion shattering against the forest floor. The griffin then furrowed her brows and took a predatory step backwards at the sight in front of her. The thief hid their face behind a ceremonial steel mask bearing the shape and image of a cobra, with the ceremonially matching gloves, gauntlets, and greaves. The snakeling had an interesting collection of items sagging around their waist, to include a hammer, some rope, a silver canteen flask, and some sort of toolkit. The hilt of some secondary weapon appeared to be strapped to the back of the figure's waist. The rest of their form was clothed in a black skin-tight apparel that didn't save much for the imagination, which consequently revealed the masked figure to be quite a generously endowed lady.
Oh, come on! Really? You have got to be kidding me!
Agreed. That was quite uncalled for. Look what you just made me do.
Risa held her sword aimed defensively at the thief as she took a step toward her.
Whoa. Look what I did. You're the one trying to steal from us.
Steal? I wasn't stealing. I was merely examining your wares. You seem to be quite interested in some rather...
The snakeling's eyes trailed down from the griffin's eyes to her waist.
Fascinating things. I'm sorry. Why are you not wearing pants?
What? Don't try to change the subject.
I must say, those are quite cute looking. Although, I think you might want to consider retiring them soon. They seem to be quite loose on you.
Risa blushed and used her free hand to try to pull the front of her tunic down to cover her unmentionables.
Stop looking at him! Eyes up here, buddy!
As you wish. Like I said, I was merely examining your wares. Nothing more.
Yeah, right. Like I'd actually believe a pile of crock like that.
It is the truth. I am not from your land. Your customs here are unfamiliar to me.
Yeah, okay. Alright, fine. Let's say you're more rogue than thief for the time being. You better have some money to pay for that vial you just broke.
Oh, please. It was just a healing potion. And I don't see why I should have to pay for it when you're the one who startled me in the first place. Besides, they don't even cost that much.
They cost 50 freaking crowns, dumbass!
The snakeling crossed her arms defensively.
Well, there, you said it yourself. They only cost 50 crowns. Barely something to get worked up about unless you're a pissant.
I'm sorry. Unless you're a what? Are you trying to piss me off, lady?
Oh, no. I only meant to say that only the lowly common folk worry about such matters.
Yeah, alright, Miss Moneybags. So, you gonna pay up then, or what?
Oh, no. It's not my fault.
How? How is it not your fault? You're the one who beaking dropped the vial.
After you startled me like some brain-dead moron. Now listen, I was just trying to...
Moron? Listen, you either pay me back right now, or I'm about to lay hands, and I'm not a healer. You get me?
Forget the potion, you simpleton. I simply came here to...
Call me a simpleton again, you prick.
Oh, that was even more uncalled for. Where is your sense of diplomacy? Is this how you normally deal with conflict? With your fists?
Well, yeah. Normally, the bad guy isn't such a wuss about it. But ideally, yeah.
Disappointing. I thought you might still be of some benefit to me. But I can see now that you would simply be more of a handicap than an advantage to me. This is a lost cause. I must bid you farewell.
Whoa there, pal. Aren't you forgetting something? What do you mean I would still be of some benefit?
It no longer matters. You failed the test. You are of no benefit to me. I must go, and you will get nothing. Which is what you rightfully deserve for such ill manners. Maybe next time you'll bite your tongue and think before acting like a brute.
The snakeling turned her back to the griffin as if to leave. Before she could get too far, though, she felt the flat of the ranger's blade press lightly against the side of her right shoulder. The snakeling stopped in her tracks but didn't turn back around.
Wrong answer. You're not going anywhere until you pay me for that healing potion. It's either that, or we do this the hard way. And trust me, you do not want to cross blades with me right now. I've had one hell of a day.
Oh, if you wanted a beating so bad, then why didn't you just say so? I'll be more than happy to put you in your place, little one.
Hey, I am at least average height, okay?
The snakeling looked over her shoulder at the ranger and set her with a condescending grin as she looked her up and down.
Not from where I stand, shorty.
That's it! I've had just about enough of your sass, lady.
The snakeling began to look forward once more.
Funny. I was just about to say the same thing about your arrogance. If a duel is what you desire, then I will be more than happy to teach you a lesson in humility.
Now look who's sounding arrogant. Why don't you put your money where your mouth is? If I win, you hack up the gold to pay for the healing potion you shattered.
Fine. And if I win?
Risa paused for a moment, not really knowing what to offer.
Well, we don't have much, but you can take your pick.
Interesting. To first blood, then?
Risa nodded.
To first blood.
We have an agreement, then. Ha!
In less than a second, the snakeling withdrew the blade from behind her waist, whipped herself around in the opposite direction of the ranger's sword arm to face the griffin, and smacked Risa's blade to the side in a single fluid motion. Not expecting the sudden burst of movement, Risa was left completely off guard, consequently leaving herself wide open to a follow-up from her opponent, to which the rogue was more than happy to oblige. Keeping her blade in contact with the griffin, the snakeling suddenly lowered their stance, lunged forward and struck the ranger with an uppercut with her free hand. Risa let out a pained grunt as the open palm of the rogue connected with the underside of her jaw, sending the ranger stumbling backwards in a slight daze. Seeking to end the fight quickly, the snakeling surged forward to capitalize on an additional strike to put the griffin down. Risa heard the quivering advance of her opponent and made a wide sweeping arc in front of her to keep the rogue at bay. The masked figure parried the attack with her short sword before quickly counterattacking. Seeing the attack coming, Risa lunged backwards just enough to keep herself out of the blade's reach and angled her own sword up at the snakeling's throat to gain some distance from the more agile opponent. The woman snarled behind her mask for having to pause her advance and smacked the griffin's sword with her own, but this time the ranger kept her blade fixed in its defensive position. There was a slight pause in the fight as the two warriors circled each other, examining one another for weak points.
I know I am new to this land, but isn't aiming for the throat a tad too aggressive for a duel to first blood?
Maybe. But with all those head-lopping swings you were throwing, I thought you might have changed your mind.
If I'd wanted to kill you outright, I would have done so already.
Sure. Hey, that was a pretty nifty trick you pulled back there. Don't think I've ever seen anyone move like that before. Where did you say you were from again?
I didn't. Nor will I be discussing such matters with the likes of you.
The rogue made several probing attacks to draw the griffin out of her guards, but Risa held her ground, feeling out her opponent's striking tempo and waiting for the right moment to strike. Suddenly, the masked figure lunged forward only for the griffin to meet her in the middle with a lunge of her own, leaving the two combatants locked their blades together. Although seemingly bearing equal strength at first, it became quickly apparent that the griffin was the stronger duelist between the two of them. The ranger used her strength to quickly dominate her opponent, allowing the griffin to drive the large snake backwards several paces before finally maneuvering the snake into a close grapple. Risa hooked the back of the rogue's ankle with her foot, causing the two combatants to hit the floor with a shared grunt. The two struggled against each other's might for only a few seconds before the griffin's strength was able to overpower the rogue, allowing the ranger to work her way into a full mount position over the snakeling, despite her best efforts to slip out of the griffin's hold. Risa straddled the sides of the rogue's torso and took several strikes to the side of her body as she quickly worked to disarm her opponent, eventually managing to get control of the woman's blade and toss it away. With the snakeling disarmed, Risa decided to have a little fun before finishing the match. The griffin leaned forward, slipped her free arm around the neck of the snakeling and pulled herself back, drawing the rogue's head under the crook of her armpit to keep her from moving around as the ranger began to stand them both up off the ground. The scaly combatant had managed to throw a few clean punches at the griffin's torso at first, but all that stopped when the ranger tightened her hold around the snakeling's neck, causing the woman to refocus her efforts into prying herself free from the griffin's hold. Risa moved the snakeling's head from under her armpit to just above her stomach before using her weight to pressure the snakeling into a bent-over position, giving the ranger a perfect line of attack to her finishing move. Risa grinned mischievously as she stared down the back of the rogue, her gaze eventually settling on a sliver of red fabric which popped out significantly when sandwiched between the dark grey scales of the rogue and her dark-collared pants. With the fight all but over, Risa took a moment to resheathe her blade on her hip, leaned over the rogue's back and latched her sword hand onto the woman's undergarments. The snakeling yelped as she felt a cold hand glide over her scales as it slipped just beneath the waistband of her pants.
Is that a little red thong I spy? Ooh la la. Hope you weren't trying to impress anybody.
Hey! What are you doing? Unhand my unmentionables at once, you brute!
Sure thing. Once I tear him off.
Without another word, the griffin gave the rogue's underpants a strong yank, Impressively, the underwear managed to stretch itself all the way to the upper middle of the snakeling's back in just one pull. The rogue yipped in a mixture of pain, embarrassment, and surprise as she suddenly felt her underwear sink deep into her crotch while simultaneously leaping high up her back.
You dare! You dare defile my undergarments with your grubby little talons?
Hey, I wash my hands just as much as the next gal, so don't get your panties in a twist. That's about to be my job.
Wait a minute!
Risa gave the snakeling's thong a series of lighter, shorter yanks, not wanting to destroy the rogue's undergarments just yet. She wanted the fun to last after all. Inch by inch, the fabric slowly crawled its way up the snakeling's back until finally reaching the woman's neck.
Wow. These things should have at least torn a little by now. You must have some tailor lady. I bet these babies could go atomic real easy. Might have to test that theory out.
Before Risa could test her theory, however, the snakeling whipped its thick tail around and slammed it into the ranger's back, causing her to loosen her grip around the rogue's neck in surprise. The rogue took the opportunity to slip out of the ranger's headlock and deliver a solid knee to the ranger's kitten makers.
Ah! Oh, why is everyone aiming for the crotch today?
Risa grunted in pain and released her grip on the rogue's thong, allowing the slippery combatant to retreat to a safe distance. The two adversaries gave each other some space and took a moment to recover. About a full minute passed before the two were able to recompose themselves for another round. Risa unsheathed her blade and pointed it towards the snakeling with a pained smile.
I win.
Not yet.
But you're disarmed. And I...
Not quite.
The snake flicked a thumb back at the hilt of the curved sword that was poking out from behind her back, and Risa mentally kicked herself for not taking it off the woman when she'd had the chance.
You know, before I was going easy on you, I only wanted a taste of your skill, but then you had to go and act like a child and do whatever the hell that was.
Yeah. Here, we call that a good old-fashioned wedgie. By the way, you, might want to take a moment to, situate yourself back there, Red. Just saying.
The snakeling opted to leave the waistband alone, letting her thong hang loosely behind her.
Yeah, I know what it's called. Where I'm from, we call it a dirty move. No self-respecting warrior would dare choose to employ such childish tactics in a fight. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Ha! Self-respect? Lady, I lost all my self-respect a long time ago. Now, are you gonna surrender now or what? Because the way things are going, I think we both know this fight is only gonna end one way. With my boot up your ass until you pay me for that healing potion.
Enough! You talk too much. Your arrogance will be your downfall.
The snake withdrew the sword from her back and held it up ceremoniously before transitioning into a combative fighting stance.
Risa wiped the sweat off her forehead with her forearm and took up her own fighting stance before fixing the snake with a cold, determined stare.
Both combatants took a moment to temporarily examine the other.
You know, you're deceptively fast. Way faster than I gave you credit for.
And you are much stronger than I previously thought.
Thanks. You sure you don't want to concede?
Not on my life.
Yeah, well, good thing I'm not taking it that far then. All I need is a good nick!
Risa suddenly lunged forward with a series of quick thrusts at the rogue's abdomen, to which the snakeling parried expertly before returning her own attack with several large arcing sweeps of her single-edged sword. Risa blocked the first two incoming blows before rolling out of the way of the third. As she rolled out of the way, she quickly slashed her blade across the snakeling's greaves before stopping in a crouched position and whipping the blade into a protective position above her head, to defend against the downward strike from the rogue. Risa grunted from the blow as they locked swords once more, but kept her sword up despite the snakeling pressing down on her. Pushing back into the rogue, the ranger began to stand up, but just as she did so, she was sent flying backwards with a kick to the sternum. Risa gasped in pain as she landed back first into a sturdy tree. Not given any time to breathe, the ranger rolled out of the way just as the snakeling's blade sliced into the tree, right where her head had been a mere second ago, and missing her body by only a few inches. Risa began to smirk a bit. This was exactly what she'd needed. She took a quick breath and quickly exhaled before unleashing a torrent of rapid strikes on the rogue. The snakeling did her best to dodge and parry as best as she could, but had to give up the ground she'd gained or otherwise risk getting sliced to ribbons under the griffin's onslaught. The two warriors clashed back and forth in their precarious dance of death for nearly a full minute, with the two of them demonstrating their opposing masteries of the blade. Every so often one of them would score themselves a small cut on the other, but nothing significant enough to warrant one's submission. After another minute of fighting had passed, the two began to slow their attacks slightly as the battle fatigue finally set in. The more they fought, the more desperate their attacks became. As Risa went in for another strike, the snakeling caught the ranger's blade with the guard of her hilt, and moved the griffin's blade out of the way to punch her opponent in the face. Risa spun to the ground with a squawk, fell prone on her back as the rogue lurched after her like fallen prey to finish the job. As soon as the rogue had gotten close enough, Risa quickly pulled a knee to her stomach and kicked the snakeling square in the crotch, just as they were about to deliver a finishing blow. The snakeling doubled over slightly, with a pained grunt, and attempted to plant her sword into the griffin's shoulder. Risa quickly used the hilt of her sword to guide the incoming blade out of the way into the grass, before deciding to give the rogue another generous kick to the noodle factory. The snakeling stumbled backwards with a groan, and grabbed the griffin's offending foot with her tail. The rogue snarled as it picked the ranger up with the appendage and proceeded to launch the griffin several feet away. Risa hit the ground a few times before using the momentum of the throw to roll herself back into a semi-crouched stance. As Risa looked over at the rogue, she could see that she'd done a number on her with that last attack. Taking another deep breath, the ranger drew herself to her feet and carefully approached the snakeling with the sword at the ready. The rogue watched her approach and tightened her grip on her sword. The two warriors glared at one another silently for a moment before both simultaneously shouting their battle cries and charging at one another. They only made it within 5 feet of each other before being pulled into the air by a cloud of green magical energy.
Hold it! Everybody freeze!
Risa screamed like a schoolgirl as she felt the all-too-familiar feeling of magic energy enveloping her body as she lifted several feet into the air. Panicking, Risa squealed and yipped as she desperately attempted to free herself from the unknown source of magic. As the ranger frantically squirmed around, she caught a glimpse of a robed figure walking toward them, with her hands outstretched in their direction. It was Tanya.
Okay. Someone better tell me what the beak is going on right now.
Tanya? Whoa, did you just curse?
Not now, Risa.
Risa relaxed just a bit after realizing who the magic caster was, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something unnatural was currently enveloping her in its embrace. As the magpie approached, Risa could see that the mage was wearing a pair of dark navy blue pants. She also noticed that the mage seemed to be wincing a lot, as if straining under some invisible pressure.
Tanya, are you okay? You don't look so good.
I'm fine. You're both just really heavy. Are you alright? What happened?
Tanya questioned as she lowered the griffin back down to the floor and released the ranger from her magic.
It's a long story, but it starts with her searching through your stuff in the dead of night.
Risa nodded over toward the rogue. Tanya looked over at the snakeling, who was continuing to struggle in place, not being able to do more than shift around within the aura of magic that was binding her. The magpie withdrew a small, coiled-up piece of thin rope from under her robe as she approached the rogue, ensuring to keep her restrained under her magic until she could bind her.
I really am sorry about this, but I'm going to have to bind your hands until I can get all of this straightened out.
After another quick struggle made in vain, the snakeling lowered her head with a sigh of defeat, before nodding and releasing her sword, allowing it to fall to the ground. With a twist of her hand, Tanya turned the tall creature away from her and lowered the woman to the ground and positioned her hands behind her back so the mage could bind her hands together. Tanya then rotated the rogue with another twirl of her hands before setting her on the ground fully and dispersing her magic.
Now, do you have anything to say for yourself?
Yes. What the overgrown chicken says is true.
See, I told you she... Wait, what did you just say about me?
I was searching through the saddlebags on your pack, but I was just looking for interesting items worthy of trade. I did not see anyone in your camp when I first arrived, and I was curious. So I simply sated my curiosity. This is not strange where I come from. Like I said before to your friend, I am new to these lands, and I am not yet fully acquainted with your customs. So I apologize if I caused any offense, but I assure you, I had no intent to steal.
Tanya gave the snakeling an inquisitive stare before looking back at Risa.
Okay. So, is that why the two of you were going at each other's throats just now?
Risa shook her head as she stood back up to her feet and placed her hands on her hips.
Nah, I could look past that part. Although, I still don't buy this whole "I'm not from here" story she's trying to sell. I stopped her because she broke something of yours. She was glossing through some of your nerd books when she stopped at one of them and got, super distracted with it before dropping one of your healing potions. You know, causing it to shatter.
You what?
I know those things don't come cheap, so I wasn't about to just let her leave without compensating us first.
Well, given our current lack of funds and supplies, I'd say that's pretty fair. Healing potions are pretty expensive,
Tanya said as she shifted her eyes back onto the masked woman and crossed her arms.
So you two nearly killed each other over a healing potion? I hope you both realize how idiotically ironic that is.
Both Risa and the snakeling looked away from the magpie as she scolded the two of them. Tanya shook her head again before continuing.
So why not just pay for it? Are you low on funds as well?
Given my current situation, I dare not say. I will say, however, that I would have paid for the item if its destruction were truly my fault. A healing potion only costs a mere 50 crowns after all. But it wasn't, you see. My fault, that is. You see, your friend here, she startled me from behind, on purpose, I think, and I was so surprised that I dropped the vial. I'm sure you would have too, if someone snuck up behind you and nearly made you jump out of your skin in the middle of the night.
Risa, tell me you didn't.
Tanya bowed her head and pinched the bridge of her beak before face-palming.
What? She was going through your stuff. So what if I barked at her?
You didn't just bark at her, though. You snuck up on her, and then you startled her. You were trying to toy with her, weren't you? Why else would you have tried to sneak up on her like that?
Risa looked away with a pout.
That's what I thought.
Well, she shouldn't have even had that thing in her hands anyway. If I'd known she was holding something fragile, I would have been more careful.
I know, and you're not the only one to blame here. But you really need to think about this sort of stuff before you start jumping headfirst into these things, Risa. One of these days, you're going to bite off more than you can chew, and you're going to regret it. You know I'm right. This right here is a perfect example of what happens when you don't think things through.
Risa crossed her arms defensively, but gave a reluctant nod nonetheless. Tanya placed a reassuring hand on the griffin's shoulder before turning back to the snakeling currently sitting on the ground.
As for you, I figure you must be from Kaldon. So, just so you know, it's considered pretty rude and very much illegal to just start sifting through someone else's belongings in these parts. Or anywhere else for that matter. So, maybe don't do that in the future if you can help it?
Okay, whoa now, wait a minute. How do we even know she's actually from this Kaldon place? What if she's actually just a thief? She could just be saying that stuff to get people to go easy on her. That's possible, isn't it?
It could be, but I highly doubt it.
Yeah? Why's that?
Well, for one, have you ever seen any tall snake people anywhere in Lauren?
No. Not that I can think of at the moment.
Right. Exactly. There's next to none, actually. The Kaldamese people are heavy isolationists in almost every way except for trade. They don't tend to migrate outside of that continent unless under rare circumstances.
So, you think she's telling the truth, then?
Their conversation was suddenly interrupted by a soft, polite cough.
You know I'm still here, right? You could just ask me, you know. If you let me up and unbind me, I'd be more than happy to.
The griffin stuck up her hand to gesture for the rogue to stop talking.
Hold on there, Danger Noodle. We'll deal with you in a moment.
Risa said before turning her attention back to the magpie.
So, what do you think?
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure she's telling the truth about that. The rest, I'm not so sure about though.
Huh. What's up?
Something just doesn't add up. What would a Kaldamite be doing all the way out here? And by all accounts of what I've read, Kaldamites are very social amongst themselves, so they tend to travel in groups. But if that's the case, then where are the others? But most importantly, why is she so interested in dragons?
Wait, what? How do you know she's interested in dragons?
When I came across the camp, I noticed one of my books was just laying on the ground. It was a bestiary. One solely focused on dragons, basilisks, and worms. It doesn't take much to put the pieces together.
Yikes. Okay. Good catch, Tanya. We're definitely gonna need an answer for that one. Well, looks like we got our questions sorted out.
Risa turned back to the snakeling.
Wanna answer any of them?
Risa proceeded to crouch down in front of the snake. The rogue simply stared back at the griffin before looking up at the magpie, and then returning her gaze back to the ranger.
Not particularly, no. You already failed my test earlier. I no longer see any benefit in you now. Whatever your skills, I'm sure I can find better elsewhere. Hopefully.
What does she mean by all that?
Hell if I know. She was talking like that when I met her. She hasn't stopped since. Whenever I try to ask what she means, she just keeps going on about how I failed the test and that I'm no benefit.
Risa made air quotes with her fingers before shaking her head at the snake.
Whatever that means. I didn't even know I was being tested. Pfft, figures. Never was good at taking tests.
You sure you don't want to explain why you're so interested in that book?
The snake rolled her eyes with an impatient huff, stared up at the magpie and fixed the mage with an annoyed stare as she slowly shook her head.
I see no reason why I should tell you my interests, nor my reasons for being in this land. And I will not be hassled to disclose such matters like some common thug.
The ranger took a knee so she could look the Kaldamite square in the eyes.
Well, that's unfortunate. Because the way I see it, there are only two possibilities here. This is just a really wild string of crazy circumstances. or it isn't. And one of those possibilities just doesn't sit too right with me. So I'm gonna need a few answers from you. And one way or another, I'm going to get them.
You can try, but I doubt you'll do anything to severely harm me.
Are you calling me a liar?
In a word, yes. Am I right? Am I not?
Damn! She called my bluff!
It wasn't all that hard. You seem to be the kind of person to wear your feelings on your sleeves.
I do not. That's so not true. Right, Tanya?
Oh. Well.
Risa dropped her beak, eyes wide at the magpie's sheepish response.
Oh, whatever. You know what? Screw it. I'm moving into Plan B.
Risa quickly got up and positioned herself behind the snakeling as if preparing to put the woman in a rear-naked chokehold. The snake hissed and writhed slightly, but couldn't do much beyond. Risa held the snakeling steady and placed her scaled hand over the Caldamite's exposed belly.
Oh no. You're not planning on doing that one thing, are you? Risa, are you sure this is the best way to get information from her? I'm sure we could come up with something more civil than this.
Oh, I'm sure we could. But my way is a lot more entertaining. I hope you're ready to start singing, lady.
Wait, we can still be civil about this, can't we? Why don't you just let me go and we can just forget we ever met each other?
Sorry, Snakeface, but that ship sailed a long time ago. It's time to pay the piper.
The griffin took her palm off the snake's belly and raised it high into the air before slamming it palm down to the woman's exposed stomach.
Pink belly!
The snake tensed up as the griffin slapped her stomach, but otherwise was unaffected by the initial stinging sensation of the strike.
Yeah. Is this it? Ha! This is how you intend to pry my tongue? Fools! Stop this utter nonsense at once. Let me go before you.
The griffin repeated the process once more. Again, she slapped her open palm into the snake's exposed belly and said the word pink belly. The cobra let out another soft grunt before chastising the griffin for her measly efforts. This process went on for several minutes as the griffin continued at a steady pace as she pummeled the snakeling. After a while, the taunts and chastising remarks slowly faded to whimpers and grunts as the griffin slowly began to turn the Caldamite's belly pink from all the slaps to her unprotected scales. Every so often, the griffin would give the rogue a short reprieve by making a fist and grinding it back and forth vigorously along the top and back of the snakeling's exposed head for a couple of seconds before returning her attention back to the snake's belly. Eventually, it even got to the point where Risa had needed to change hands. Only 10 minutes in, and now nearly every smack to the rogue's stomach was causing the poor woman to squirm around in pain. Tanya stood to the side and winced every time she heard the griffin's hand connect with the snake's sore belly. She didn't like having to go along with such treatment, but considering the fact that they needed to know why the rogue had slipped into their camp and searched through her pack concerned her enough to risk putting her trust in the ranger's ability to withdraw information from the Caldamite, even if her methods were a bit unorthodox. Another swift slap, accompanied by a yelp, drew her attention back to the two on the floor.
Pink belly!
Stop wasting my time!
I will when you do. Pink belly!
Why? Why do this? Of all the forms of torture, why use this one?
Because it's entertaining. Duh. Gonna talk yet?
No! I will not be bullied into submission like some child.
Suit yourself. I can do this all day. Oh yeah. Pink belly!
Nearly 10 minutes in, and the griffin was starting to slow. She looked over to Tanya and shook her head.
Okay, wow. She's resilient, man. This is gonna take forever if she doesn't break soon. Ugh, great. My hands are starting to get sore now. Oh, wait, hold on. If this is gonna be a lost cause, let me try one of these. It's not very often I get a chance to pull this on someone. We'll figure out another way to make her talk. Once my hands get a chance to recover.
Risa stuck her finger in her mouth and swirled it around before withdrawing it with a wet pop and jamming it into a small hole that the griffin could only assume was the snake woman's ear.
Wet Willy!
What is that? Pull that out. Pull it out right now.
Oh, what the? Are you serious? If I'd done this like 20 minutes ago, I'd still be able to feel my hands right now. Ugh, whatever. Hey, snake breath. You gonna talk now?
Risa asked as she swiveled her finger around in the snakeling's ear, causing the woman to squeal and shake in disgust.
Yes! Yes! I yield. Just take it out, please.
Risa withdrew her finger from the rogue's ear and wiped it along the woman's temple as she released the caldamite from her hold and stood back up.
Spill. What's your name?
I am Xana of House Belil, but those who know me address me as Xana.
Well, we got her name, and that was one of the questions. So, you gonna answer the other ones, or, do you need another wet willy?
No, I'll talk. I'm alone. I came to this strange country alone, and I left over some pretty complicated reasons with my family. And I was originally here to, well, there's no polite way to say it. I've been following you, but I assure you that once you hear why, you'll see that I had a good reason to do so. You see...
Following us? For how long?
Since you left Hawkberry.
Hawkberry? You've been tailing us since Hawkberry? Wait, then that means... Oh, you bastard! Ugh!
Risa kicked the rogue's shin guard in anger.
You watched us get tossed around by those bandits and didn't even try to help us.
Please allow me to say my piece.
Oh, screw that. I say we hang her up somewhere. That should keep her out of her feathers for at least a day.
No, you mustn't delay me further. I'm already short on time.
Now, Risa, hear me out, okay? I'm just as mad as you are right now. But I think we should hear what she has to say before we do anything rash.
Risa rolled her eyes at Tanya and loosened her grip on the snake slightly.
Fine. But she better have one hell of a reason.
Okay, Xana, tell us. Why were you following us?
All right, I'll tell you. I happened to be at the tavern you two visited the other night when you were reminiscing together, and I overheard you mention the dragon in Erebus and your plan to raid it toward.
Well, that's just friggin' fantastic. So you heard about our little quest, huh? Well, I'm sorry, but this quest is already well underway, and we don't need any more members.
That's cute.
What is?
You thinking that you're the first person to come up with this idea. I hate to break it to you, but as we speak, there are over a dozen other groups attempting to make their way up to the abandoned fort of Erebus, with several who have already tried and failed one way or another. I've been searching for a strong party to join for over a month now.
What? A month? Oh, come on. I came up with this idea like 2 weeks ago. Are you serious?
I'm afraid I am. But I wouldn't look so crestfallen. Despite having so many contestants in this competition, none have returned successful. Truthfully, I don't think anyone has ever made it to the fort yet. Meaning,
There's still a chance that we can make it up there first.
should you survive the journey? Yes.
I think I get where you're going with this. So you're not just looking for any party to join. You're looking to join the party with the highest chance of success.
You are smarter than I give you credit, young mage. You are correct. But ever since the first wave of adventurers failed to make it up the mountain, there have been fewer and fewer prospects willing to consider such a journey, and considering the waste of time and resources should the party fail.
You need to ensure that you join the right team.
Exactly. And this is exactly why I was following you, to see if you and your friend here would have what it takes to make it to the top of the Erebus and back. Wait, now though, after everything you two have put me through, I can plainly see that your specialties lie in other areas.
So, that's what you meant when you were talking about this test of yours. You were trying to see if we had what it would take to stand a chance.
Precisely. But as I stated before, you failed, or at least she did.
Well, I got news for you, Scales. We don't need a third wheel holding us back. We're doing just fine without you. Isn't that right, Tanya?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, before, I was confident we would be able to handle everything on our own. But after dealing with Henry and his bandit friends, now I'm not so sure. At the very least, having an extra sword by our side couldn't hurt us, Risa. Think about it. Someone else who can help take watch at night. Someone to help keep us out of trouble. Protect us from hidden traps and guide us through hazardous terrain. She'd be perfect for us.
Risa rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath.
All right. You have a good point there. A few, actually. Okay, fine. I guess it couldn't hurt to have another person helping us out. I'm good with her joining us if you are, Tanya.
I hate to be rude once more, but as I have already said, you already failed my test.
Yeah, you keep saying that. But what exactly was the test supposed to be? And why does it even matter?
Oh, I assure you that it matters quite a lot. Before visiting the tavern you two were in, I had just parted ways with my group because they failed to rise to the occasion when it mattered most, and nearly cost them their lives.
Risa crossed her arms, unconvinced.
Xana merely flicked her
Tongue out with a soft hiss in response.
I see you're not convinced, so I will speak frankly. I saw their resolve crumble after an encounter with a few gnolls. Their courage failed them, and so they fled. I knew at that point that if they were to fail so early in our journey, they would also fail in other moments of crisis in the future. And so I promised myself that I would first examine the heart, character, and principles of the next group I chose before making the final decision to join them. Which brings us back to why I began following you two. Knowing my last party wouldn't make it more than a day out of the wilderness, I went back to the nearest town to seek out another group when I stumbled upon your conversation. I couldn't join you outright at the beginning of your journey because I needed a way to observe your abilities and interactions, both inside and outside of combat. Hence why I've been following you from a distance. I needed to see you in action before I could make any long-standing decisions about attempting to join forces with you. This is also why I needed to refrain from interfering with your encounter with those bandits. I needed to see you two in action. I admit, it was a rather impressive display of swordplay and magic prowess at first.
Oh, yeah, sure. Glad you could get a nice view of us getting our asses handed to us.
Yes, well, had you two not split up at the beginning, I dare say you would have had a much better chance of fending them off. In any case, After your defeat, I found your resolve to endure rather respectable. The fact that you didn't just immediately give up and go home afterwards convinced me that you might just have the grit to push forward even when things were to turn dire. That's exactly the type of theme I was looking for. One that wouldn't just turn back at the first sign of trouble.
Okay, I'm sorry, but if that's the case, then I don't see what the problem is.
The snakeling pointed her tail up at the griffin.
Her.
Me?
Yes, you. You are a highly proficient warrior.
Yeah, you bet your scaly ass I am.
Indeed, but you are also impatient, not to mention crude and impulsive, and your demeanor makes you a poor candidate for diplomacy, which may be of the highest priority if the dragon is indeed still alive and needs to be parleyed with. Hence why I can only predict disaster in working with you two, particularly because you have no patience, but also because you're a bit of what is that word? Oh yes, an asshole, as your people might say. I mean no offense by this term. It is just a simple observation.
Oh, come on. Just because I speak my mind, it doesn't make me an asshole.
You are most correct. Speaking your mind does not make you an asshole. It is in fact you being an asshole is what makes you an asshole.
Okay, that's it. I'm stringing her up by her underwear.
Why don't you try untying me first and we'll just see who does what to who, you loudmouthed chicken.
I'm a griffin, damn it!
Tanya cut in between the two in an attempt to help them calm down.
All right, easy, everyone. Let's just talk it out, okay? There's no reason to get violent. If you two can just keep your hands off each other for a few more minutes, I think I have a proposition that could benefit all of us.
Xana flicked her tongue out with another soft hiss.
Oh, and what do you propose?
Well, you said it yourself. You need a team to join, and you're running out of time to find one. The proverbial clock is ticking, and with each passing day you don't start your journey, you risk giving a head start to a team that might actually make it to the treasure first.
Yes, I am well aware of the fact. I've been saying as much for the past 10 minutes. What is your point?
Right. My point is this. I think you should join us.
Tanya could see the snakeling opening her mouth to reject the offer and quickly cut her off.
Please hear me out. If you don't like what I have to say, then I promise we won't delay you further. But at least hear what I have to say.
The rogue paused for a moment as if considering the proposal before finally shutting her mouth and giving the magpie a curt nod. Tanya returned the nod with a small smile as she continued with her proposal.
I agree with you that we aren't the most ideal roster for a large-scale adventure. Nor do we have the capacity or ability to take on armies or defeat dragons. But that was never our intent in the first place. We've already decided that the head-on approach just isn't going to work for us. Instead, we'll be taking the stealth approach. We plan to slip in, take what we need, and slip out before anyone or anything even knows we're there. With that approach in mind, I'd argue that we are the ideal group for something like this. But we would be even more ideal if we had a rogue on our team to scout ahead and show us the way. You know what they say. There's strength in numbers. Alone, we each might be strong in our own ways. But together, we will be a formidable force to be reckoned with. Which is why, despite Risa failing your initial test, I still think you should join our party. You don't know Risa like I do, sure. She can be impatient at times, and she's definitely a loud person. And yes, so often she tends to blow up over the little things, but deep down, she has the ability to be patient when it counts, especially when the stakes are high. You told us your main priority was ensuring that the next group you joined would have what it takes to make it to Erebus and back. And I assure you, that group is right here. With you and the team, we'll be even stronger. What do you say?
The snake pondered the question for a moment before slowly nodding back.
All right, I accept your proposal. You will have my blade.
Great, it's official then. Xana, welcome to our party. I am sure that our combined skills will make us that much more of an effective
Tanya exclaimed
team
as she
moving
went
forward.
about untying the woman's hands.
I cannot argue with that.
Xana said as she rubbed her wrists gingerly.
Good. Now, Risa, isn't there something you'd like to say to our newest party member?
Risa responded to the Major's question with a fold of her arms, to which Tanya corresponded with a swift elbow to the Griffin's
Ow.
ribs.
I'm sorry I tried to give you an atomic wedgie.
Tanya brought her hand to her face in a facepalm.
No, the other thing.
Huh? Oh. Glad to have you on our team, I guess. No hard feelings about earlier. I kinda get carried away sometimes. Let's just forget our little fight ever happened and move forward from here, yeah? What do you say?
Risa said as she extended her hand towards the snakeling. The Kaldamite looked down at the Griffin's hand for a moment before grabbing it with her own and giving the Ranger a firm handshake.
I suppose I can do that. Yes. No hard feelings.
Tanya smiled at the two warriors as they shook hands and gave a curt nod.
There, that's better. Now here, take these.
Tanya said as she tossed a crumpled up piece of apparel at the Griffin.
Oh yeah, you got me some pants, right?
Not exactly.
As Risa unfolded the fabric, she found that Tanya had not grabbed her pair of pants like she had hoped. Instead, Risa was currently holding up a crumpled up skirt, nearly 2 sizes too small for someone her size.
What? A skirt? Ugh, man. I hate skirts.
I know. But these were the only 2 clean articles of clothing out there. Trust me. I checked.
You wanna switch?
And miss out on the very real possibility of you accidentally flashing someone? Not a chance. Now then, I'm going to go grab my stuff and make sure everything is in order before we leave camp. Once that is taken care of, you two can assist me in packing things up.
Risa and Xana glanced over at one another, then back at the magpie before offering a nod in return and walking over to join the mage. And so, with a tentative partnership set in place, the 3 heroines packed up their camp and slowly made their way out of the forest, headed towards the city of Kingsdale in search of a safe place to lay their heads down for the night. The rest of the arrangements could be settled another day.